Hi, I'm Dr. Alex Bowman from Western Sydney University. The voluntary work reform I'm briefly outlining here began as a grassroots campaign in the 1990s. Unemployed people led the push for a policy change because they wanted the option to meet their mutual obligations by volunteering 15 hours a week with a government-approved community organisation that the participants themselves could identify and choose to work with. Thanks to these efforts, as shown here on this slide, that idea is now policy for people who are over 55. They can even propose their own activity for an approved organisation to support, such as volunteering to help organise and run a community garden through a local neighbourhood centre. In alliance with Shelter New South Wales and the Justice and Peace Office, we're now working to extend the voluntary work option to unemployed people who are under 55. So anyone receiving income support can choose it if they wish. This reform aligns with calls that were made in a 2023 parliamentary inquiry into mutual obligations. It's also worth noting that an earlier Senate committee looking at mutual obligations found that current rules around voluntary work push aside genuine community contribution in favour of less helpful activities like work for the dole. To show this, the committee presented several case studies, examples of which included a PhD medical librarian who was volunteering at a hospital but was told that this work did not qualify and was sent to a factory work for the dole placement. The same thing happened to an unemployed solicitor volunteering at a community legal centre. It also happened to a young man volunteering with emergency services, a Lifeline volunteer and a volunteer firefighter who had more than 20 years experience volunteering in firefighting. In every case, meaningful voluntary contributions were dismissed in favour of activities that diminished personal autonomy and motivation. The committee also found that work for the dole as an alternative to voluntary work had no measurable success improving employability. It did not support real social participation and actually created risks to the safety and well-being of unemployed people because of its coercive design that undermined autonomy. If we really want to support and empower people facing long-term unemployment, we need pathways that actually build on their autonomy and the positive community contributions they're already making. Participant-led voluntary work is one such policy pathway. The logic for removing these restrictions becomes clearer when we look at how this reform affects three broad groups of unemployed people. The first group is made up of people who would never actually choose to do 15 hours of voluntary work a week. The reform we're proposing does not change current mutual obligations for this group, so any concern about easing restrictions for this group is simply unwarranted. The second group are those unemployed people who would volunteer, but only as a short-term stepping stone to the job and higher income that they want. Again, removing the restrictions on voluntary work will have no real implications for this group, as they engage available employment supports and move into paid work and higher incomes as soon as they can get it. The third group are long-term unemployed people who are unlikely to find paid work, but who would choose to volunteer in their communities to meet their mutual obligations. For this third group, the current restrictions are also inappropriate because their choice to volunteer is a genuinely positive alternative to the long-term unemployment that they're experiencing. Research by the Reserve Bank has shown that this group's current experience of long-term unemployment for far too many is resulting in lifelong exclusion from the labour market, reduced social networks and declines in mental health and well-being. By contrast, evidence presented by the Senate Education and Employment Reference Committee demonstrated that volunteering builds skills, improves employability, strengthens confidence and belonging, and contributes to healthier communities. For this third group, even when paid employment is unlikely, voluntary work turns unemployment into a more productive and socially connected experience. The motivation to choose this option needs to be encouraged. For people who can return to paid work, the incentive of a higher income will by itself see them back into employment as soon as they can get it. So for all three groups of unemployed people, the current restrictions are simply not necessary and even harmful, and so should be removed. Finally, it's also important to think about what this reform means for public and community housing. These communities already have a strong tradition of volunteering through their involvement with NGOs, community food gardens and food and clothing distribution, resource repair and share programs, social and arts activities, and many tenancy-related commitments. Yet this important voluntary work is rarely recognised by Centrelink, certainly not for people under 55. Yet if these contributions were formally recognised, far more residents could meet their obligations in this self-determined way. This shift would also serve to strengthen public and community housing by supporting neighbourhoods that are active and connected, rather than pushing people who find themselves alienated from paid work down a path of increasing welfare dependency. Voluntary work that satisfies mutual obligations is truly an alternative to this. It's a path that would help build a more positive and active vision for tenants and the communities in which they live. So in conclusion, we welcome anyone who wants to help develop or advance this important policy reform. Let's change this policy so that unemployed people under 55 can also experience the many benefits of volunteering and help contribute to making their communities more vibrant. A full outline of the reform, including reference to the studies I've mentioned, is available on the Voluntary Work Alliance website, along with contact details should you like to get involved or ask questions. Thanks for watching.